Alright folks, Ken here with Dominion Predator Control, and today I'm going to show you how I skin a cat and how I flesh a cat and how I put one up. So we're going to start the whole process from beginning to end. It's going to take me a little longer than normal making a video about it, but I'm going to show you how to do it the right way, or at least the way I do it. If you've got a better way to doing it, please leave me a comment below and let me know what I could do better. But you always want to make sure that you get any ticks that are on the animals or anything that's in the fur out of it before you skin it. So I always brush it down real good. If there's any scat on it or any kind of mud or anything, you want to get it all out. Make sure. A lot of times the cats in the back of the neck and back here on the back, sometimes right behind the ear, just on the top of the head, if they have ticks at all, they're going to have them in those spots. The rest of the places they can get to pretty good and clean, but if you run your hand down them real good, you should be able to feel them and find out where they're at. This just helps with the finished product, making sure that you don't poke any holes in it whenever you're fleshing it, making sure there's no burrs or stickers or wounds. Sometimes you'll have a wound in there you didn't realize was there, and you'll run. Once you peel it, you'll see it's there, and if you don't take good care of it whenever you flesh it, you can make it worse. So sometimes you got to sew it up. I had a stick in this one. I was thinking about selling this for taxi. Had that part of him cut open already and put a stick in there so I could put a tag in there. But this cat looks pretty good. This is Tom, small Tom, probably about 20 pounds. And I'm going to show you how I skin these and show you the setup. I've got a pretty decent setup going on here with the winch on top. I just got that winch from Harbor Freight. There's a frame here that I made, and then the base that I put on it, I had a different base on it originally, but the base I put on it now is one of those bases that are made by Tom Stalker, and I got this in 2020, and it's a really cool base. Low ceiling skinning base is what he calls it. I'm not sure if he still sells them or not, but they're actually really cool. The opening cut matters a lot. I always try and start right here at the back of that ankle right there, and I put my cut in here, and then I run straight up that line in the fur that changes color. And a lot of people tell you the same thing when they tell you about skinning animals. I had a hard time finding videos on how to skin cats whenever I was getting into fur trapping. Now right here at this spot, instead of going to the anus, there's a vent here, and then there's the testicles here. I'm actually going to just run this line straight on the south side of this vent and those testicles, and then I'm going to make sure that I just keep going all the way up that line back to the ankle. If you were skinning this for taxi, you would start, if I do a case skin, they like dorsal skins too, but I don't know how to do that, but I've done case skins for taxi, and I start here on the foot, at the back side of the foot, and go down the ankle and down the back side, and I basically skin it the same way. When it's a Tom for sure, I come on the south side of the testicles and leave all of this intact. But whenever we get the tail skinned out, we're going to pull that off. So basically at this point, I'm just going to loosen up the fur around the edges where I'd already cut. Doesn't take a whole lot. Just get a little bit loose in these areas, because we're going to get in there and pull that out. Knife's extra sharp today, so be very careful. You make a slit in the pelt. A little slit in some places really doesn't matter. You can always sew up any mistakes that you have, but if you're not careful around the belly and you start putting cuts in the belly, you can cause some problems. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be selling a damaged fur. And this is if you're putting it up and you're going to sell it at a fur auction or sell it to somebody who's going to use it for a garment. I'm just going to get this loose a little bit. Looks like I got a little bit deep into the gland area there in the back of the knee. There's a whole lot of extra fat on the pelt I got to get off without cutting it or damaging it. I want to keep the glands. I harvest all the glands, so it's important that you don't lose them in the skinning and peeling process. Whenever you start peeling the skin off here, it's real easy to make the mistake of losing the glands. You want to make sure you hold on to them. So once I get about that much of it done, I run my finger through here and separate the rest of it. You know, you can just use a finger, or some people use a screwdriver or sharpener or whatever. And once you've got a space in there, you just kind of separate it from the leg by pushing it on one way or the other. Same on this side. Run that through there. Get it out the other side there, just like that. Run it up, pull it down, and that basically peels everything off the leg. Just come through here, pull that off. Pull that off, and then just peel that down. Get that down there around the belly, down here around the tail, and then I'll show you how I make this tail cut once I've adjusted here. I just use these cables. I just make up cables with ferrules on them, put loops on them, slide loops, and that's pretty much how I hold on to my fur. So I've adjusted the camera a little bit so you could get a little better view of how I do this part. Typically this was the part that really hung me up whenever I was, you know, the opening cut, and then this part here is what hung me up whenever I first started skinning bobcats. So you can see we've got the vent and the testicles along with the anus here, and I just cut a little bit down the tail, not much. The tailbone's pretty round, so you don't want to, it's not like a coyote tail. It's got kind of a little bit of shape to it where your knife sits right in it and pulls down along this side. But it's very, the bone's really round, so it's real easy to slip off to one side or the other. And I just get in on that one side, and I just hold this side here, and I just come right on out. You pull in along the tail, that way you don't poke a hole through the back side of the skin here. Pull in along the tail here, and then once you get in that spot, you can just pull straight on out. And it, you know, now you've got that part peeled off already. So same thing on this side. Since I've already got an incision here on the base of the tail, I'm going to bring that knife in right there next to the vent. I'm going to get it to where I think it's in a good spot. I'm going to bring it up, I'm going to pull it right out, and it's going to come right off. And now you can see we've already got the back side of the tail pulled out because of how easy it pulls. Whenever your cats have been on ice for a while, they pull really nice. You can basically do the whole thing with your hand. Whenever you've got a coyote that's been on ice, they are very difficult to flesh out and skin. It's much better to skin a coyote when it's hot. So you can see here, try and keep this in the camera shot. All I'm doing is basically kind of loosening up the tail a little bit. You could, if you wanted to, you know, you could pull this and it'll come loose. You can do it by hand. But I just like to cut it, make sure it's loose, just loose enough. And then I bring in the tail stripper. And the tail stripper device is pretty basic. A lot of you have seen them and used them before. Mine's filthy. I use it all the time. And I just put it over there, get a hold of it, grab the base underneath the tail here, and grab the rear end, and then you've got this in between your fingers and like this, and you just pull it straight out. And then now your tail's loose from the pelt. And then I just run either a knife. I've seen folks use it, you know, a fillet knife or whatever. I've got one of these tail zippers, and you just put it down in there, and you run it all the way to the base, pull it through. And now you're gonna have a little fat here. We're gonna take that off whenever we flesh the animal. Now that we've got this, speaking of fat, there's fat on the belly here, and this doesn't have to be on the pelt. That's something that you can take off now by putting a couple little incisions in here and making sure you don't cut the pelt. And as you pull, you just pull past it. Just let it stay on the pelt. For sake of time, I'm not going to worry about that right now. What I'm going to do is readjust the camera and put it back where I can show you how to pull this down. Alright, so you can see there's a good amount of fat on the cat. And there's this fat, and there's 2 glands in this fat, and you're going to want to have those whenever it's all said and done. But once you get this, you know, get a hold of this, you can just pull it and it comes off real easy. And you can see all of that came right off with it. Now that could stay to the carcass, but I can take that off later and use that, use those glands that are inside there. You can see this cat has a little bit of damage here. Looks like he'd gotten in a fight or something. A little bit of blood spot, a little bit of damage on his belly. And you can see how easily it peels all the way down. And this base isn't perfect on the Skinner, but it's just tall enough for me to be able to come down here. And I can always bring that up a little bit if I need to. If you need knee pads, wear them. I'm still young enough. I'm not too worried about it most of the time, unless I got a bunch of blood everywhere. But this spot right here, I'm going to make sure that you get that real good before you pierce through, and that you don't have anything hanging up on the neck, because we're going to hook all this up to the Skinner here. Same as the back legs, screwdriver through, pull, screwdriver through, pull. Pretty simple. Now you can see here, got those front legs separated, or at least on the shoulders back here, and then we're down almost to the base of the neck. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the rest of this. If I was doing a coyote, I probably would have started pulling it up here around the belly somewhere. But we're going to go ahead and pull this here. I'm going to show you how you use this device. You just bring this fur down. You put it inside here. You start cranking down. And once it grabs, it's going to start pulling. You're going to see it start pulling in this spot. Now you can see we've got a good tight pull on it, and we can just start peeling, and that thing just peels, and it'll peel as much as I want to, but I want to get these feet free before I start putting any more pressure on it. I can always pull on, you know, the winch if I want to yank it on up, but we want to make sure that we get these ears real good and that we take care of these feet without doing too much damage down here. So sometimes whenever your cats, you can see that's the paw he was caught on. Sometimes whenever your cats have paws with their nails out, whenever they get caught, if they get rigor mortis with those nails out, those nails stay that way. And you got to be careful. Sometimes I'll tape up the feet that's got the nails sticking out of it so you don't rip the pelt right here. Not that it matters a whole lot, just never had to mess with the rip there, because I'll always make sure to put something on it if it's like that. But just make a good solid cut all the way around this, good straight line, and it comes off just as easily as you cut it. And now you can see we're here at the jaw, and now these are the ears. So I just cut a little bit, kind of cut it free, you know, just tracing the silver skin right there, just so I know where we're at. And you can see I'm kind of long earing at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and cut solid all the way through. I'm going to get a hold of the ear, and I'm going to peel that skin behind it loose so it's no longer there. You can hit the jawline if you need to a little bit, really free some of that up. Same thing on this side. You can see where we cut here, so we're going to cut in a similar spot. Try and make it as even as possible, and then just cut that loose from right there. Now this is the part, if I'm ever going to make mistakes, it's usually here. When I first started skinning these things, when I was making mistakes, it was up here on the first cut, or it was up here around the anus. But now, after skinning these things for a handful of years, the most mistakes I make now are right around the eye. And if I was skinning this for taxi, I would have just cut the head off right here. And I would have left the head intact the way it was. I would have cut the tail off right at the base after I skinned all of the vents off and left them on the skin. And I would have cut the tail off right there. But since I'm not doing that, I'm just skinning this to put it and flesh it up and put it on a board. I'm going to go ahead and cut this all the way around the eyes and get the skull off, because almost every part of this cat I use for something. Whether I'm making bait, or I'm making lure, or I'm using the paws. I take the pads off the paws and use those as glands. And then I take the paws themselves and I stake them down in the ground and use them as a pool toy for coyotes. And it works real good for coyotes and cats. But right here is generally where I make my mistake. So let's see. You can always tighten it up a little bit. I can bring this up a little bit, make sure we're good and tight. But you can see the eye sockets are here and here. And we want to make sure we get in there in such a way where we cut right over where the eye's at without damaging the pelt if we can help it. And I like to get a hold of something like the ears. And when I do that, I just pull down and get that eye exposed. And once I've got that eye exposed, then I'm just going to come through here on the top side. I'm going to cut right along the base of that where the eye's at and try and not mess that pelt up anywhere next to it. Doesn't matter a whole lot. They don't normally put the heads on the garments whenever they're making garments. It's usually just the belly piece, and that's about it. Sometimes you see some of the cheaper garments that are made and they've got back and belly pieces on them. And sometimes you see really cheap garments that are just made with the backs. But the belly is where all the money's at. So same thing on this side here. I'm going to get in where that eye's at. You can see I'm starting to cut that eye there. Looks like there's a little damage there somehow, but it's not through the pelt. Yeah. Must have gotten in a fight right. Oh, that's the hole I cut whenever I put the space for the tag. So, duh. Get that right behind the eye there so we don't have any issues. And then now that we're here, we can go ahead and open up where the jaws are. And then you get a hold of the spot right there where the jaw's at. Bring that down. Same thing on this side. If you've got the time or the space, you don't make the space. And then once you have it, you can put your finger in there where the jaw's at and just bring that on down. And then run your finger all the way through the jaws and then just peel this part off without making any mistakes. And once you get to the nose, you just cut the nose off and leave it on the pelt. The bottom jaw, I've seen people put them up with the bottom jaw skin on there, and I've seen people put them up with the bottom jaw skin off. I don't leave the bottom jaw skin on, but where you cut it here, it doesn't really matter, because I'm going to clean that up whenever it's on the board, and I'll show you how I do that. So here's the finished skin. Very little mistakes. I did put a little slice in the leg whenever I was cutting down the leg, and that won't really matter. You can either sew those back up if you've got a little spot there, or you can just make the leg a little skinny, because the leg doesn't sell anyway. What matters is that you don't mess up the belly. I can't even find the slit in there, but I've got a slit in the leg somewhere. What matters is that you don't mess up the belly, and that you keep the belly in good shape, because the belly is what's going to sell. The belly is what you're selling whenever you put these cats up on a board. So I'll get these cameras situated, and I'll put this cat on the flesh and beam, and I'll show you guys how to flesh it out. Alright folks, now that we've got our cat good and skinned up, we're going to go ahead and put it on the beam and flesh it. And this is usually pretty simple. If you're new to it, you might take a long time when you start out doing these, but after you've done a handful of them, they tend to go pretty quick. It's not always a necessity whenever the flesh that's on the face is this, you know, this thin, but there's a little bit of meat in here, so I'm going to go ahead and take the cheek meat off first. And I use Lee Steinmeier's wide knife. I had another knife. I tried to use it on a coon. I had a hard time with it, and I decided to get a good knife. I got one of Lee's good knives from Jeb Hollingshead, Okie Cable Trap Supply. He had one, and I bought one of Lee's knives from him. And it's been by far the best knife that I've used. The one side here is sharp. The side here that you push with the cats and coyotes is flattened, just a very small amount all the way until this little end here, and this little end right here is actually sharp, and whenever you have something you got to cut off, you can use this end to do it. But I push with the dull side that's right here. And I like to start here on the head and get this cheek meat off. Another thing about the knives, you don't want, whenever, say the piece is here, you want your knife to be pretty flat. You don't want your knife to be at an angle like this while you're pushing down something. You want it to actually be pretty flat. So instead of doing this with the knife, I'm actually laying it pretty flat. And once I figured out that laying it flat really helps a lot, I started just pushing, peeling flesh off of critters really quickly. I always keep a trash can or a tub or something close by, so whenever I peel stuff off with my hand, I got a place to toss it. Just get that cheek meat off of there. Same thing on this side here. Hear that popping? That was the whiskers. You got to be careful on the whiskers. If you have ticks, you need to get them off before you do this. And the nipples on the animals, they if there's any impurity in the fur on the other side, you're going to know it from this side whenever you're pushing. So just get that cheek meat off. I don't worry about anything above the eyes here on the nose, but I like to take all this meat off here on the head. Keeping that knife flat really gets that stuff to start pushing. What I like to do right here is I use that sharp part of my fleshing knife, and I cut that off there. Cut part of that cartilage out of there too. Same thing on this side. Get down to this spot. Maybe push a little bit harder, get some of it loose, and then use that sharp part of the knife, cut that flesh off there, and if I need to cut any of that cartilage out, I will. We're going to put borax on this once we're done. So I generally start right here past the head where I pushed it down to, and I just want to get in here and get this membrane starting to peel off. There's a membrane on here that's got all this fat attached to it and some of the flesh, and you just got to get it to start peeling a little bit. You can see there's some more of that flesh that I pulled off and some of that membrane. You can just yank that off and toss that in the trash. Once you get it pushing a little bit, you just start working your way around the pelt. I don't believe all the membrane needs to come off. You're going to use borax to dry it, but all of the fat that's underneath it has to come off. So you can either peel the membrane off along with all the flesh that's left and the fat, or you can push the fat out of it. And you know, it is what it is. They're not always going to be perfect whenever you're putting up fur, but how you handle it in the end determines what kind of a quality product you put out. So it's important that you handle it well. So this is the belly here, and there's this strip of fat runs all the way up the middle. So I always start that up here before the arms, push it down past the arms. There's that membrane on the other side, right in here. Get that pushing. Get that membrane to peel down. Slide an arm in. Push everything off the inside of the arm right there. The angle of your knife really matters. That's especially when it comes to the underside of the belly of these cats. You can see it just start to peel. You gotta be careful. Hear that popping? Looks like we're getting close to one of those nipples. That's the back side, and we haven't really gotten here yet because we started on the belly part. That membrane peeled down. Any of the residual fat, you can see all that fat on my blade coming off right there. The other arm. See, I left a little bit of fat there on that arm. We're going to have to work our way all the way around that. Get that membrane with some of that flesh on it moving. See that fat underneath just peels right out. Make sure you get everything off the arms. I already done that part. I missed this part here. Make sure you get all that fat out of there. Like I said, that membrane can come off, but I don't think all of it has to come off. All the flesh, all the fat needs to come off. Now we're on the belly again here, so you need to be real careful. Anytime you're working here in the belly, you need to make sure you're careful. There's a nipple. Looks like I already made a little bit of a mistake, so you got to be very careful whenever you pull those. I'm going to try and keep that membrane with the flesh and fat intact all the way down. It'll make it a lot easier on you as you're fleshing it. If you keep it all together instead of peeling it all the way down one side and then all the way down the other side. A lot easier to push. You keep that knife flat and it'll just start to peel right off on you. Before you know it, you'll have the whole thing down. Careful of those other nipples. Make sure you don't cause a problem there. Sometimes you got to really dig in right after them to make sure you get the fat out from underneath that part of the belly. Just spin the hide and push the membrane. Before we know it, all comes off. Always be a little extra tender on the belly. A lot of fat, but if your knife works real well, you can just push it right off without a problem. Keep your knife in good order. It's important to make sure that it doesn't have any dings in it or digs in it or got any places that are sharpened improperly. If you're just pushing, you want a knife that's got that edge that'll push and won't cut through. And if you're doing any coons or otter or anything else, you probably want to make sure you have a spot on the knife that's always sharp, which is why these wide knives are so great, because you got one sharp, one dull. See some of the fat here on the belly is trying to hang out. You got to make sure you backtrack a little bit if you need to. There's some fat hanging out in here. I'm going to push all that out of there. Make sure it comes out. See all that? You don't want that on there if you can help it. Now we've reached the bottom. We're starting to peel right there on the belly. A lot of times I'll run this down the legs a little bit, and then I'll come over here with my hand, and I'll use my hand to grab the membrane, and I'll just pull that membrane off. Pull it all the way down. See that? Get a whole lot of it off that way. Pull that membrane all the way down. Same on the other leg area. Get a hold of that membrane. Put my fingers up in underneath it so I've got a place to grab onto there. Just yank that whole thing off. And if you do it right, you end up getting the entire membrane in one go without having to worry about it. Didn't even split anywhere once. We kept it a whole piece the whole way down. And then you just want to clean up the legs and the tail. Make sure there's no extra pieces of fat hanging on the edges. You'll see some of that around there. So you just want to make sure that you push it off. You get it all to come off. And then grab and yank and toss whatever you have to. See some of that sitting in there? That's that leg that I cut. See that? Don't worry, I'll just cut that piece right off there and it won't, nobody will ever know the difference. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to not be damaged. I've seen guys use burlap whenever they're fleshing coons or something that'll soak the fat up and kind of rub this stuff off. I always just end up fighting it, making a mess of everything. See how that's a little uneven right there from whenever we were cutting right around the base of the tail. Whenever you're putting it up, you can actually snip all that straight if you like. Make sure you go down the tail real good. See, there's a little bit of fat built up right there, some gristle right on the rear end. You want to go ahead and push that off and run down the tail. See all that fat that comes out of there. You can get that out. Once you borax it, it'll be good to go. So, a little bit of flesh membrane right there. There we go. Yep. Okay, so that's the fleshing process. Doesn't take long. You know, if I wasn't sitting in front of a camera talking to you about it, you could probably do the whole thing in 30 to 40 minutes if you were taking your time making sure you were doing it right, making sure you didn't do anything wrong. And when you're first learning how to do it, it might take you an hour to skin. It took me an hour to skin a lot of the animals when I first did them. I still got some animals I haven't skinned yet. Fox, a badger, and a couple of mink. Actually, I caught my first mink in 2019, 2018, something like that. Caught my second mink today, so I got other animals to take care of too. But this animal looks good. And then what I'm going to do to prep it before I put it on a board is I'm going to put borax all over it. So what I do a lot of times with the borax is I make sure I hit the head and arms real good, and then I make sure that I hit the skirting of it really good and around the edge. So basically I'll just put borax in here. I've heard it said to use about 2 handfuls. That's about right. If I were to put 2 handfuls of borax in my hands and space it out, that's probably about what I use. But I make sure I cover all the flesh areas around the ears. If I want to, I can peel any of this off, go through and cut some more of that cartilage out of there if I want to. But if you've got a lot of good borax on it, it's going to be fine. We're going to cut that bottom jaw off, so that stuff right there really doesn't matter. Hit the arms real good. Doesn't take a whole lot. You have more borax on the floor than you have on the pelt. Make sure both sides of the arms and the armpits you've got enough borax in there to just kind of get rid of the wetness. Anything that looks wet should have a little borax on it. You can see the back piece there. And now the belly and the skirt. So make sure you get all the way down the leg there a little bit. Plenty of it down there by the skirt. You don't want any possible residual fat or any of the membrane to cause any problems down there. Make sure you're getting the tail real good. You can see that. Make sure it's all dry looking down in there. It looks like there's just a little bit left. I could use some borax and it's done. Now I'll get this camera situated, and we'll take this cat and we'll put it on a board. Well, I've got that cat pretty well centered. I basically just use my pins, perforated board, and then scissors from this point out. You don't need a whole lot after this. It goes pretty quick. You make sure you got it on there where you want it. And it can't hurt for you to give it a little brush before you board it. Some of this you might cut off. You can see where I've got that hole that I made. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut that right off there. Just cut that part off, and then we're going to get up here. We're going to cut that right off. So it'll be a little skinny legged, but nobody will know the difference. Alright. It's a little bit long right there, and that's okay. As long as there's no fat hanging off any of this, you don't have any problems with the hair. I like to cut the feet and the front legs, back legs even. Right about there is where I've got it set. So we'll cut the same over here. Make sure that when we put them up, they'll be pretty even. Give you some nice last looks at how centered that cat is. And then what I'll do when I have a board underneath like this is I'll bring this down pretty tight where I want it, and then I'll run the pin through the board into the side right there. That way it'll hold through the board into the side. And now we got it pretty much where it needs to be. I'm going to pin the center down, the end of it there, and we're going to bring the sides in. I use one of these magnet trays for my my pins, because they have a steel shank, but they're aluminum pins. And I tried to use plastic pins my first year, wondering what all the hoopla about the aluminum pin was about. And that was a mistake. So the plastic ones are hard to push in, hard to pull out. They like to break. They just don't hold the way they should. So find a place to get you a good spot there on that. Bring it down about where you needed it. Same thing on this leg. Get the end of it there. Bring it in and bring it about the same spot. A little bit of that membrane still sticking there. And before we pull it down here and down here, we're going to finish with the center. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll use the same pin on both sides. I'll get the edge of it here, get it pulled out so I know where the edge of it is, and then I'll grab that edge with that pin, and then I'll grab this edge with the pin and I'll bring it in together so they're in line with one another. This is what they call a Colorado stretch. I think a guy on Trapper Man named Colorado Cat popular for this stretch. And I learned how to put up fur reading a post on Trapper Man when I first got into putting up fur. There wasn't a whole lot of resources for video at that time, and that wasn't that long ago, but there wasn't a whole lot of video resources to show you how to skin a cat. Very few videos on YouTube that I could find, and I guess a lot of guys who make their own DVDs, they had made videos, but I didn't own those DVDs. So you can see we've brought the legs in together to make it look like the belly's extended, and then we've got it shorn off at a flat level like some of these other ones here to make sure that it looks just good and uniform. We're also going to comb it a little bit once we're done pinning it up, but we're going to comb it when it's all said and done after we borax it at the very end. Once it's dry, we're going to bring it off. We're going to borax the fur. We're going to blow the borax out of the fur, scrub the fur with borax, and make it real nice and bright, so it'll look real good whenever it sells. But when it comes to pins on this side, that's about it. Flip over here, do the same with this side. And I like to pin that in, but with that perforated board there, I might just pin the tail and pin the sides there. Find you a good spot on the bottom of the tail, pull it nice and taut. It doesn't have to be super tight, and you're not trying to overstretch the fur. You just want to put it on there so it dries. The bigger the head on the pin, the easier it is to push, the easier they are to pull. I think they make different size shanks and different size heads when it comes to these aluminum pins. And I own some of the smaller ones, and they're almost as hard to put in and as hard to pull out as the plastic ones are. But if you look at them real closely, you'll find out that a lot of that really has to do with how sharp the shank is, the needle point on the pin. Even a small pin will work just fine if it's got a good sharp needle point, but if it's really blunted, they don't work very good. So that's it for that side. And this side here. And now what we're going to do is move up and start the top of this fur. Okay, the battery on my second camera angle died, so we're going to use the big camera. to do this top side here. And this is all pretty basic. Doesn't take a whole lot. But I like to cut these when they're about the same size. This one's still a little folded up underneath. So we're going to cut that one off. Anyway, cut these off around the same size here. Make sure they're just about right. Nice and straight. Makes it look real good and uniform. And then the jaw, I always cut this extra part of the jaw out right here. And just grab the side of the lip. And then start cutting down along that line. Make it look pretty oval shaped. And then get back up to that lip. Just cut it right off. And it looks good enough. Got this centered on here where you need it. And then I use just the ends of hangers. They have hangers that have the little bra strap holders that actually are part of the plastic that move in, and then they've got the piece that's like this where you can just rip that off if you want to. These work better. The cheaper hangers you get like Dollar General or something will probably work better than the ones you buy at Walmart because they don't have that other piece in them. Sometimes getting that other piece with the bra strap hanger inset on the main beam makes it pretty difficult to pull that thing out of there once it's dried up. So I like to get that down in there. Kind of turn that arm out so it's mostly white right there and it's not too laid over on this side. That way it doesn't look like it's pushing out so far. Sometimes you'll do it and they'll be pushing out pretty far, and I've done that on some of them before. So it's a learning experience. I'm always trying to do better than I did before. I found out in the last 38 years that I'm really competitive, but I'm more competitive against myself than I am against other people. So I like trying to beat myself all the time. Do better than I've done before. Fur put-up's not hard. A lot of guys in Oklahoma don't put up fur. And that's one of the reasons I'm making this video. That's why I want people to know how to put up fur, because we don't get very good prices on our fur at the auctions. People come down here from other states and they take pretty good advantage of the guys down here. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they don't put up fur. You know, we have some pretty decent fur out here. Some of the cats are really nice. You can see there, that's the gist of how it's going to dry. Just like that. And then we got to pin the other side. And then I'm going to set it up to dry, and that'll be it. And the only thing we're going to do is we're going to pin those ears up. Take those ears and pin them up through the eye holes. And you can pin them up anywhere if you want to. It's not going to matter. You're not selling the face, you're not selling the ears, you're not selling the tail. You're selling the belly. And the belly's what sells. So that's that. A lot of times what I'll do whenever I comb these, I'll comb them down and then I'll come back up it a little bit. And kind of where the fur's sticking straight out a little bit. It'll make it easier whenever you're putting the borax, the final borax on the fur, because we are going to do final borax, and I probably won't show you that process in this video. This video will be done before some of these furs are, but I do have some that are ready. I could probably do it. And we're going to take borax and we're going to rub it into the whole pelt, front and back, and you know, clean it, make it shiny. And then once that's said and done, we're gonna blow it all out with a shop vac or a leaf blower, and they're gonna look real good. They're gonna sell real good. So that's that when it comes to putting up fur. The skinning process, the fleshing process, and now the boarding process. It doesn't take long. Hopefully the lighting was good enough for you guys to get a good angle on it and take a good look at it. Don't overthink it. It's not a big deal. Just don't cut the belly. You know, if you're going to go through and, do hack jobs on your first animals, start on coons, start on coyotes. The way that I fleshed and put up this animal and cut this animal is pretty much the exact same thing on a coyote. The tail process might be a little bit different, and that's really about it. You might cut the opening cut or the money cut just a little bit different, but all in all, this works. and it makes your furs look good. And if you take good care of them and you sell them, you get more money for them, and you get more reward out of it. You know, the thing about trapping compared to most other outdoor sports, which I love a lot of other outdoor sports. I love to fish. I love to hunt. I love coyote hunting. But this is more rewarding. You get more out of trapping. You get more out of taking the fur home and skinning the animals. You spend more time in the woods. You spend more time with the animals, you know, in the places where they live and they eat. And you get a lot more out of it. So for 3 months out of the year, wherever you're at, or for 4 or 5 months out of the year, if they've got different trapping seasons, or if you do nuisance work, you're on the front lines when it comes to being with the animals and for conservation efforts. And I think trappers probably have the best idea what's going on in the wilderness than most other outdoorsmen. And not because, you know, other outdoorsmen aren't very smart and biologists and know a whole bunch about the outdoors, but because trappers spend so much time in the real world with the experience. A lot of times deer hunters, they go hunting 5, 6, 7, 8 times a year. I go out trapping 31 times in January, 30 times in December. You know, we spend a lot of time out trapping, and sometimes it's not just, you know, for a few hours. It's all day long. So trapping, if you wanna be an outdoorsman, trapping's a great place to start. Just about every state has laws on trapping, on what you can do and what you can't do. Some states are trying to outlaw. Vermont's trying to outlaw trapping completely right now. Places in California don't allow you to trap at all. Certain states only allow you to trap with cages, which is pretty cool still. But there's different laws in your states, and in some states, you know, a lot of the people don't put up fur. I know the guy at Coon Creek Outdoors, Stu. He had all that bunch of videos, fur handling videos, that I learned how to put up fur with when I was younger and I started getting into trapping. And he did them in 3 parts, you know, and he would do the video just like that, and you would have 3 different sets of the videos to show you how to do each process. And that's how I learned how to put up coyotes and how to put up coons, and that's eventually the knowledge I transferred over to learn how to put up cats. But I don't know what the laws are in his state, but I've never seen him skin a cat, and I don't know if he can keep them or not. I know a lot of people in states don't have 0 open season when it comes to cats, not even a day, not even a 1 on a quota. And luckily here we can bag 20, you know, per license. So there's a lot of people out here that could trap and catch that many. Most people don't trap that many that do trap. Most people just trap, you know, 10 or 15 and they let them go, or 8 or 12. My first year I only trapped 9, I think. And I kept every one, and some of them were early, so they weren't really worth a whole lot. But this year we caught 28 so far, and we've got 19 to tag. So we've done pretty good. We still got a few days left in the season. I got a beaver, 2 beavers, an otter, and a mink to take care of. So I'm going to do that, but not on video. So that's the fur handling video. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. Send it to your buddies. Let them know what's going on. I'd like to kind of turn this channel up to where at least got 1,000 subscribers so I can go live on mobile. And I was beaver trapping today, and I didn't take the camera with me when I'm beaver trapping because there's really no place to hold a camera to do it. And you just watch some of these other guys like Trapper Jay and Up Outdoors, some of these guys that are, you know, trapping beaver all the time and in water all the time, and they use a camera mounted to their body. And that's pretty cool. That would be cool for at least vlogs, that you put out videos just randomly throughout the season to show people what you got going on. That would be cool to have some setup like that. But you can't be carrying around a camera on a tripod whenever you're trying to get in and out of beaver holes. It just don't work. So I didn't bring out much video for the beavers today, but we enjoy trapping these cats. This is my first, maybe second favorite animal to trap. I really like trapping mink. I wish I had more mink around to trap more, but got a good one today, got a good one a few years back. Now I got 2 in the freezer, and I'll probably have them taxied. So put up your cats, make them look good, sell them for more money. We'll keep on trucking. Till then, Dominion out.